Hey everyone, I'm Pam, and today I am ranking some video games. So today is all about games that use full motion video, also known as FMV. This is a little subsection of games that has never really gotten a ton of respect, and when it started becoming popular sort of in the mid-90s, around the Sega CD, 3DO era, people thought of these games as a little gimmicky, although some thought it was the future of gaming, and having cinematic presentations is, where the future lay. Now, these games do include both animated content, things like Dragon's Lair or Time Gal, but also games that use real actors in their cutscenes and in their gameplay. All of the videos I have, or the games I have now, are that style with the real actors, just because I haven't really played that many with the animated ones, and when I think FMV, I definitely think of the ones with real people starring in them. I've really always had a bit of a soft spot for FMV games, and while some of them are a little gimmicky, I will admit a couple of them are some of my favorite games of all time of any genre. So I'm going to just pull up our little ranking list made on tiermaker.com and we will start the ranking. Alright, so I've got the tier maker up now. I have 38 FMV games to rank. They're alphabetical here. You can't see them all, but they'll pop up as I start placing things. The tiers, I think, are fairly self-explanatory, but just for clarification, S means sort of the best in this category. A is a very good game, B is good, C is mediocre, D is kind of bad, and F is just beyond redemption, and there's really no reason to talk about it at all. I actually don't know that anything will be in that category. When it comes to what I personally look for in an FMV game, I like the gameplay to be good. I prefer things that are a little more interactive than just sort of the choose your own adventure type game. But also, as we'll see in some of these, sometimes the mechanics can sort of interfere with the actual FMV and story. So I'm not a fan of that. So I like a good story, good characters, decent acting in them, but also some interesting gameplay. So let's get ranking. Alright, so just going alphabetically, or I guess starting with numbers, the first game is The Seventh Guest. And I do have a review of this game up on my channel, and it's an interesting one because it was one of the games that really pushed forward PC gaming technology, specifically around the adoption of CD-ROMs for games. And it's an interesting one. It's very much a puzzle game. You go into basically a haunted mansion that you find yourself in, and the FMV scenes are things that you see as you go into different rooms. You're not really interacting with the ghosts in the videos, you're mostly just watching them, and also you just do a variety of puzzles, and I find the puzzles a little bit hit and miss. Some are very good, some are quite annoying, but the game does have a very good hint system, which I really like, and I'm going to start this off giving it a B. Are You Afraid of the Dark? The Tale of Orpheo's Curse is one that I played a lot as a kid. I was a big fan of Are You Afraid of the Dark and the Midnight Society and their spooky stories. In this game, you play as two different kids, and they go into an abandoned theater, which they find out is cursed by Orfeo, and they have to talk to ghosts and solve puzzles to get out. It's honestly very much like Seventh Guest, except the puzzles are more the typical adventure, like inventory combining puzzles. And I really like this game. I played it a lot. It's honestly been a long time since I've played it. I think it's abandonware now and it's not available on GOG or Steam or anything. But I quite liked this one. I thought the puzzles were good, and especially for a kid's game, pretty strong. So I'm going to give this one a B as well. At Dead of Night is a little hard for me to rank. It's another game where you find yourself in a haunted hotel this time, but the proprietor is definitely very creepy. He might be a serial killer, so you have to go through the hotels, visiting various rooms, finding objects, and again, talking to ghosts, finding out their stories, and through questioning them about the items you find, you sort of uncover what their stories are. But at the same time, the proprietor is sort of chasing you around. So you might hear him behind you, you might have to sneak into a room and hide in a cupboard, or you might need to like try to trap him in a room. And that's where my problem with this game comes out. I just don't really like the hide 'em up horror genre. It's not for me. I don't love jump scares or that, run and hide kind of gameplay. I do think everything about this game is pretty strong. Like, I think the FMV is well done. It's pretty well put together. It's just really not my type of game. So, I mean, since this is a personal what I like list, I'm going to put this in C. But if you are into that scary hide 'em up kind of genre, then this would definitely be something that you would be more interested in than I am. So Black Mirror Bandersnatch was, I believe, Netflix's first foray into the sort of choose your own adventure game. And they've done a few more since then, but this is a pretty well done one. I mean, it has to be. It's got the budget of Netflix behind it, so it's very high production values. You play a kid in I think it's the late 70s, who is designing a video game, and he gets a chance to work with like this rock star video game designer, and sort of goes on from there. So you're just picking his actions throughout the game. It's pretty well done, honestly. The story's interesting, and as I said, like really high production values. So I'm going to give this one a B, not higher, just again because it's basically just a choose your own adventure without a whole lot else to do, but a pretty strong first effort from Netflix for these kind of games. The Beast Within, a Gabriel Knight mystery, is the second Gabriel Knight game, and this is one of my all-time favorites. You play as both Gabriel and his assistant Grace. After the first game, Gabriel has realized his family history, and he is a Schattenjäger, and he goes to his family castle in Bavaria and finds out through some villagers that a werewolf has been attacking. So he's basically trying to track down this werewolf, and then Grace comes in, and she's doing a lot of research and visiting local sort of like heritage sites to find out the history of the region, which may tie into the mystery. I think everything about this is just great. They did like a lot of good camera work. The acting is pretty strong overall. The story is quite complex and deep and has a lot of history in it and is very interesting. And I'm going to give Beast Within an S. Bloodshore is the latest game from Wales Interactive. And Wales Interactive is one of the studios that's really keeping FMV alive, them along with Diavecchi. And Bloodshore just came out earlier in November. It's a sort of live battle royale featuring influencers and like Z-list celebrities that people at home watch. So they watch these people kill each other for, money for whoever their survivor is. And you play a sort of washed up actor who may be more than he appears, and you're making decisions about who you want to ally with and where you want to go. These are very well produced. They're very high quality. The acting's generally good. The story was interesting, although I did find it kind of fell apart at the end. My biggest problem with Wales Interactive and these choose your own adventure FMV games is that they don't give you an option to save at certain spots or fast forward or skip to certain decision points. So if you want to see multiple endings, of which there are many, you have to play through the entire game again. And specifically with this one, most of the decisions are backloaded at the end of the game. So I ended up playing through it twice, I think, because I wanted to see what happened, but I just couldn't make myself play through that first half hour again because I felt like I was seeing most of the same scenes. So honestly, my biggest feedback for Wales Interactive, and I'm going to have this for more than one of their games, is that they really need that kind of chapter select or save system like a good visual novel would have if they're making this kind of game. So that said, I thought it was pretty good. I really like a good battle royale story. So I'm gonna give Bloodshore a B because I think it's a fairly good game. If they could just add in that one little quality of life change, all of their games would be better. So The Bunker is another one from Wales Interactive. In this one, you play a man who has been in this bunker basically his entire life. 30 years ago, bombs fell and a bunch of people, including his pregnant mother, went down into this bunker. And when we start the story, everyone else is dead. It's just him. And he decides he's going to break his usual routine and try to explore a little more. So this one does have some of the narrative choice, but it also has some sort of point-and-click adventure elements and light puzzle solving as well. I think The Bunker is a pretty good game. Everything's really well done. The acting's quite good. The puzzles are maybe a little bit on the simple side, but overall I think it's a pretty strong one, so I'm going to give The Bunker a B. Sibel is a sort of slice of life game. You play a teenage girl, I believe, and you interact through her virtual desktop. She plays an MMO, and she has someone who she's sort of building a relationship through this. So you're basically playing the MMO, there's really not much to it, and chatting, and then there's FMV scenes throughout. This was an interesting one because it was kind of relatable in a lot of ways to how you act as a teenager and the sort of impact that playing MMOs can have on your life. Well, at the same time, I found everything a little bit cringy, maybe because I could relate to it, but it kind of made me uncomfortable to play, and the actual gameplay wasn't all that interesting, so I'm gonna give Sibel a C. Conspiracies is a game that I believe was made in Greece. It is a private detective story. There's a few games I'm going to talk about, the Tex Murphy series, which I was a huge fan of, and that's what made me pick this game up. I think it was made in maybe 2003, 2005. I honestly don't remember it all that well. I just remember the story and the acting and the writing not being that good. There are some puzzles which are sort of hit and miss, and it just seems a little low budget, which isn't necessarily bad, but there are some technical issues, like when you're seeing a scene, there's music, but then if you get a dialogue option, just the music cuts out entirely, just like strange little things like that. I didn't really like Conspiracies, so I'm going to give it a D. Contradiction Spot the Liar is a really interesting game. I believe this was funded through Kickstarter, and it is designed by Tim Follin, who composed the soundtracks to a number of retro games you might be familiar with. In this game, you play a detective going to a small town to investigate the apparent suicide of a woman. You have to go through the town and question everyone, and as the title suggests, you're looking for contradictions in their stories that you can point to in order to get more information. I really like how this is done. It is a lot of watching conversations and choosing conversation options, but also choosing, where you want to go and who you want to question at any one time. The acting is all quite good, so I'm going to give Contradiction an A. Corpse Killer is a game I played just recently. This is a Digital Pictures game who's going to come up a lot. They did a lot of the Sega CD games. In this one, you are, I think, just some unnamed Marine dropped onto an island where a mad scientist is releasing a horde of zombies on the populace, and you basically need to help them. And the gameplay is sort of like a rail shooter, but you're moving horizontally across the screen. Zombies are coming at you, and they're really terribly animated. Sometimes they fly at you, sometimes they rush at you, but there's very little movement involved when they do any of this. It's honestly pretty janky. The characters are questionable. There's a Rastafarian who's just constantly letting you know he's a Rastafarian, and a female reporter who is either throwing herself at you or getting mad at you for not giving her enough scoops, I guess. And it's all kind of ridiculous and not all that fun to play, so I'm putting that in D. Dark Nights with Poe and Monroe is by Diavecchi Studios, who make some of my favorite FMV games. I do have a review of this one up on the channel. And you play a couple characters that were first introduced in some of their previous games, but they are nighttime local talk show hosts. And as you're playing, it's sort of broken up into separate stories. You get phone calls from callers, and they send you on some kind of mystery or send you into a dangerous situation, and you're basically doing the sort of choose your own adventure, choosing how you react to certain things in order to hopefully survive and maybe even save other people through the course of the, I think maybe 5 cases during this game. I really liked it. I particularly like the actress who plays Monroe. She is quite charismatic, and I enjoyed playing this a lot. It could use, a little more interactivity, but the stories are fairly strong and it's fun to play, so this is getting a B. Death Trap Dungeon is a series of, I'm pretty sure, tabletop role-playing games, and a number of games have been made in that series, but this one from a couple years ago is a FMV where you have a narrator/dungeon master who is talking you through your trip through the dungeon. The narrator is, I believe his name is Eddie Marsan, who you might recognize from some things. He has a very great voice. It makes the experience really interesting. I overall really liked this game. I thought there were some problems specifically around the very specific series of events you need to do in order to successfully complete the game, but I did find it interesting, the combat, everything about it. The narration was great. So I'm gonna give Death Trap Dungeon an A or a B. I'm gonna have to give it a B just because of how specific it is if you want to beat it, but overall really good. I loved how they used the FMV here, and it was a fun game. Double Switch is another digital pictures game for the Sega CD and the Saturn, I believe. It has a number of actors you probably will recognize. I have a review of this up on my channel, and this sort of takes after the Night Trap formula, which I haven't talked about yet. But you are in a hotel. This guy in the basement has asked you to help him by trapping intruders, and you go from video feed to video feed through all of the rooms in this hotel. If you see an intruder, you need to set a trap, set it up and then hit it at the right time in order to trap them. And it just doesn't work very well. The way you set traps is kind of annoying. There's sometimes multiple traps in different rooms, so you have to know which one you're doing. You can't set more than one trap at a time, or they'll overload and reset. It just has some mean design decisions, which is sort of a digital pictures thing, I find. Where, so say in the first act, there's a maintenance man, and you have to trap him because he'll ruin things. But the second act comes along, and you can't trap him, or else you'll get a game over. There's just all these little things where like, oh, you did this, game over. Oh, you didn't do this, game over. So I just found this very annoying and oddly designed. So Double Switch is getting a D. In Erica, you play a young woman whose father has just been murdered, and it brings up all kinds of questions about her family history and sort of where she came from. This is a really good one. I found the acting and the writing in this one particularly strong. It does have some sort of choose your path, but also some adventure game type puzzling and examining of objects and things like that. Overall, very strong. There's multiple endings that you can get, and I'm going to give Erica an A. Fahrenheit is another game that was on Sega CD, and though I thought this was digital pictures because it's very similar, this was actually made by Sega. And you play a firefighter going into a series of houses, and you need to find survivors or dangers like gas tanks or things that could blow up and kill you. And I don't like Fahrenheit. It's basically a matter of memorizing where you should be going and what you should be doing. Each mission is timed, so if you get turned around, go down too many wrong paths, miss things, the house you're in will just explode and you'll get a game over. So I didn't particularly enjoy playing this game at all, so I'm going to give Fahrenheit a D. Fox Hunt is a game I was really excited to play when I found out about it. It's a PlayStation game. I think it was made by Capcom. It's sort of a spy thriller kind of thing, but the guy you play is just sort of a bum who watches a lot of television, but somehow he gets caught up in some CIA plot to track down a terrorist. And I just didn't find this game worked at all. It's sort of part interactive movie, part quick time events, part exploring various environments. It's all very, I guess you could call it humorous. I just found it kind of lame. One of my biggest problems was that the camera's just all over the place. When you start the game, you're in this guy's apartment, and you can say, like, do you want to go forward? Do you want to go left? Do you want to go right? And every action you choose, like if you say go right, you're seeing things through his eyes, and then the camera shifts, and you see a close-up of the actor turning to the right, and then it goes back to first-person view. If you go forward, you see close-up of the actor walking forward, and then it goes back to first-person view. And it's just very awkward to play. There's a lot of time segments, QTEs, and it's just not fun. So I'm giving Fox Hunt a D. Ground Zero Texas is another digital pictures game, and I thought this was going to be one that I liked. You go to a small Texas town that has apparently been invaded by aliens, and you need to deal with this problem or else the entire town is going to be nuked. So you're basically watching video feeds of the various parts of town, and then the aliens, who actually look like humans, will pop up with guns, and you have to save the citizens, save yourself. There's shooting gallery segments as well as segments that are like videos where someone will pull a gun and you'll have to react quickly to it. And it started out pretty well. It actually balanced the shooting gallery segments with watching the videos decently, but then it just gets back into that mean digital pictures game design again. And as you play, there are certain scenes that you absolutely have to see because someone will reveal part of a passcode that you'll need later in the game. So if you miss one of these scenes, you may not know it yet, but your game is basically over. And I just think that's terrible. Like, why would you do that? So I found Ground Zero Texas had such promise. I really enjoyed Act 1, and then it just totally fell apart as it went on. So I'm going to give it a C because I did really like the beginning of the game, just not the end. Her Story, I think, is one of the games that's kind of responsible for the resurgence of FMV games. This game came out and it was quite critically acclaimed, and for good reason. It's a fairly open-ended narrative where you are someone sitting down at a computer and you're presented with a bunch of little clips of police interview tapes, all interviewing this one woman. So at the beginning, you have 5 videos, you watch them, and as you do, you have to take note of keywords, like she might say the name of a person or a place, so you keep that down, and then next time you can search for that word, and then it'll bring up a new set of videos that you can watch to sort of unfurl more of the story. And it's just very well done. It's a simple interface, but it's an effective one. I can only imagine how difficult it was to put this game together, that it would be presented in a good way, and the actress who is basically the star of this does a fantastic job. So I'm going to give Her Story an A. The Infectious Madness of Dr. Decker is another one by Diavecchi Studios. You play a psychiatrist who is filling in for the eponymous Dr. Decker, who either he's gone missing or he's died. I don't remember. But you're seeing all of his patients and getting caught up on their own stories, as well as unveiling a sort of overall story about this mysterious Dr. Decker and what is going on in the town you're in. And you're doing this by asking the patients questions. Depending on what you're playing on, and I greatly suggest you play this on PC rather than console, just for the ease of the interface, is you're asking questions, again, sort of like Her Story. So if you hear someone mention something, you ask about that thing in order to learn more. And I just found that the acting and the writing and the story in this were very strong. I really liked all of the characters. They all had compelling, mysterious backstories that I really wanted to unfurl. So I'm going to give Infectious Madness of Dr. Decker an A. Late Shift is a Wales interactive game, and it's honestly my least favorite of their games. You play a parking lot attendant. Something happens, you get drawn into this seedy criminal underbelly in London, I believe. And this is, the choose your own adventure type game. You make a series of decisions, deciding, what you'll go, where the night will take you, if you'll survive. And I just found that the writing and the story in this weren't very interesting at all. It was just sort of cliche after cliche. None of the characters were particularly compelling, and it suffers from the same thing that I mentioned with Bloodshore, in that if you want to see your way down another path, you just have to start the game again completely from scratch. And since I didn't find the game that interesting, I never bothered to do that. So Late Shift is going to go in D. Missing an interactive thriller is a bit of wasted potential. You play a character who has been kidnapped, so you have to do what's basically a series of escape room type puzzles in order to try to escape. There's also a detective who is trying to track you down and save you. I quite liked this. I thought it was fairly strong in terms of storytelling and the puzzles, but the problem is this is chapter 1, and there has been no... Sorry, that's Lily just shaking her ears. There's been no mention of a chapter 2 in years. I don't think chapter 2 is ever coming. Chapter 1 was maybe a 40-minute game, which didn't, give any sense of conclusion or resolution at all. I don't think that the resolution is ever coming, so I can't really say that I liked it or recommended it to anyone. So, I guess I'll give it a C, because as its own experience, it was fairly well done. It's never going to get an ending, so. Alright, and now we're on to Night Trap, which is quite possibly one of the most well-known FMV games. It started a huge bit of drama in the gaming industry, despite the fact that that really wasn't deserved, and the game is overall fairly tame. You play, some military government person. You've been told some bad stuff is going to happen at this house, at which a bunch of teenage girls are having a slumber party. So you're again going from camera feed to camera feed, going through the house, and as that happens, the house is attacked by these things called augurs, which are basically like vampires. So you have to trap them. The trapping here is much more intuitive than it was in Double Switch, but the problem is that if you want to see the FMV sequences and see the story and what's happening in the house, you can't be trapping augurs in the other room. And if you want to be trapping augurs, which you need to do if you don't want to get a game over, then you just miss all those scenes that you're seeing. And it does the same thing with the mean design decisions. There are certain scenes where someone will change the security system to a different code, and if you miss that, then none of your traps will work and you're basically screwed. So just poor design overall. I kind of want to give it a higher grade just because the cultural and historical importance, but I think it's a bad game, so I'm putting it in D. The Pandora Directive is a game that stars Tex Murphy, a private investigator in the now fairly near future, I think 2043 maybe this game takes place in, and he is hired to find someone's missing friend, and it leads down a rabbit hole of conspiracy, shady government agents, Roswell, and I love this game. I think it's some of the best use of FMV with, actual game mechanics as well. You have all real actors playing their parts, so you can go in and you can question people and see those scenes, but it also has full control 3D motion through a world that you can explore and find items and solve puzzles. The puzzles are both of the inventory type as well as more discrete type puzzles that are really good. It's got 2 difficulty modes, it's got a fantastic hint system. I just reviewed this not too long ago, and it's getting a remaster, which I'm pretty excited about. So Pandora Directive, one of my favorite games of all time. It's an S. Phantasmagoria is by Sierra and Roberta Williams especially. I know she said that this is her favorite project that she worked on, but unfortunately it's not a game that really resonated with me. It is of the point and click type of game, and you play a woman and her husband have rented this large house, and you accidentally unleash a demon who takes over your husband, and you start seeing horrible, horrible visions of the previous owner and have to sort of survive through that. My problem with Phantasmagoria, and again I have a full review of this one, is that it's just very dull. There's not all that much to do, like there's not that many puzzles, there's not that many items. When you have conversations with people, you don't have any dialogue options, it's just watching what can sometimes be a very, very long conversation, and you just sort of, the FMV sequences just seem excessive. Like, you watch the main character sit on a bed and look around for 30 seconds. You watch her go into a room and open the door and turn on the light and open up a trapdoor and then undo it all again every time she leaves the room. So it just, I know where it was going, but they just needed, to up the pace a little bit more, because it turns out just being kind of on the dull side. So I'm gonna give Phantasmagoria a C. Prize Fighter is another digital pictures game, and I actually think this one is alright. The scenes that you see are, I don't know, they just feel a little bit better done. You're a new boxer coming up, and the FMV scenes are sort of through your eyes, and you're seeing like your coach talk to you, your fans ask you for autographs, and you have to fight a series of opponents in order to become the champion. They've made some good casting decisions, like Michael Buffer is in here as the announcer for the matches. And the actual gameplay, you have a little window where you can see your opponent in full motion video, and you've got your fists up and you can choose, whether you're blocking or jabbing or whatever else boxers do. And it's a bit of a memorization game, but it's like a mechanical memorization, sort of along the lines of Punch-Out, rather than memorizing what decisions you need to make. So I actually think it's more successful than a number of digital pictures games. So I'm gonna put this one in B. Psychic Detective is an interesting one, where you play basically a sideshow psychic, but someone comes up to you and they think, maybe you're more than what you appear, and asks you to work on a case for them. And what you end up being able to do is being able to hitchhike into other people's brains. So a lot of the gameplay and decision making in this game is, do you want to go somewhere as yourself? Do you want to go take over this person's body or this person's body? So then you can experience things as them, get the access that they would have conversations that, people would talk to them about rather than something they would say to a psychic or a detective. And it's pretty interesting, a little bit on the corny side at times, but I really liked the whole idea behind it, and I had a pretty good time playing it, so I'm going to give it a B. Quantum Break is a Remedy game. I'm not sure that this should be in here. Most of the game is your typical third-person action adventure like, Control or Alan Wake, but between chapters of the game, there are basically episodes, like a television episode with real actors, some of which are actually in the game as well, that's sort of filling in some of the background story to this. I don't think it works very well. I think as a game on its own, Quantum Break is decent, probably my least favorite Remedy game, but still a decent game. But the FMV component of it, it's not that fun to play and then sit and watch something for 20 minutes in between that's only slightly related to what you've been doing. So I'm gonna put Quantum Break in C, I guess, because I don't think the FMV is used well, but the game is decent. So next up is Roundabout, and this has interesting mechanics unlike anything I've played in an FMV game before. You are a limo driver, and the game is sort of a top-down driving game, but the catch is your limo spins around constantly. So you're driving through these streets, there's obstacles to avoid, there's secrets to find, and you have to compensate for the fact that your limo just won't stop spinning. And as you play, you get new abilities, like the ability to jump, and the point of it is that you're picking people up, so you're kind of like a taxi cab, but a limo. You're picking up people, and then you get an FMV cutscene of them telling you where they want to go. Your character is silent, but as you go, you're seeing these same people sort of over and over and uncovering their stories, as well as like a bigger story. And I thought it was a lot of fun. I found the arcadey driving was really fun, and I liked all the FMV scenes, so I'm gonna give Roundabout an A. Next up is Sewer Shark, one of the Digital Pictures games that I actually liked. You are a pilot on your first day on the job, you're going through these sewers, and you're looking for a sort of utopic place that you've heard about, but is apparently a rumor, and it's a rail shooter where you're going through these tunnels and you have to listen to your navigator who will tell you what series you need to go, like left, straight, right at the next 3 intersections, and you're shooting at rats and bats and various nasty things you find in the sewers, all the while you're getting these FMV cutscenes of people sort of talking to you on your way through this. It doesn't really have any mean design decisions. It's mostly about listening to the navigation directions and remembering them, and just getting a high enough score that you can progress to the next area of the game. So I'm giving Sewer Shark a B. I think it's good. The Shape-Shifting Detective is, I believe, by both Wales Interactive and Diavecchi Studios. You play a detective who can shapeshift. Surprise. You go to a town where a murder has taken place and you need to find out who did it. A very interesting thing about this is that who the murderer is can change from game to game, so there's a lot of replayability to this in cracking the case. And you use your shape-shifting skills to get information that might not otherwise be available to you. So, say you are at this hotel, I think that's where most of it takes place, and you can shape-shift into one of the guests and then go question people, because people may say something different to that guest than they would to you as the detective. So it's an interesting gameplay concept. It's honestly kind of a lot like Psychic Detective in a way, being able to choose who you want to question people as. And I like this one a lot, so I'm going to give Shape-Shifting Detective a B. Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective Volume 3 was on Sega CD, and you play Sherlock Holmes. He's solving, I think, only 3 cases, which is honestly not very much. The game is very open-ended, and you need to really listen to what's going on, otherwise it can be very easy to get stuck. It's open, so you can call people, you can go to locations that have absolutely nothing to do with the case that you're working on. At least the first case, you can solve it in very few steps, so there's just not a whole lot of game here, and it's very non-directed, which I wasn't a huge fan of, so I'm going to give this one a C. Telling Lies is the follow-up to Her Story, and they take the same kind of concept and make everything bigger, but unfortunately, they don't make it better. You're again someone sitting down at a computer watching video files from 4 different characters. This time the videos aren't interview tapes, but they are one side of like a Zoom call or something. And the tapes you're watching are so much longer than they were in her story. So you might get a keyword that you look up, it brings up these videos. It might be an 8-minute video. It brings you right to where that keyword was used. So if you want to go back to the beginning of the video to get the context for it, you have to scrub through it. Like you have to rewind through the video, and it's very, very slow. And they're just too long. It's a one-sided conversation, so half of the video is them talking, half of the video is them listening without you knowing what's going on the other side. So even though I thought some of the story and the acting was particularly good, actually playing the game sucked. I found that they just made this as tedious as possible with the actual gameplay mechanics, so Telling Lies is getting a D. So now we've got 3 Tex Murphys coming up, all completely out of order because I'm sticking with this alphabetic thing. Tesla Effect is the most recent Tex Murphy game. It came out a number of years after the previous one. It was a Kickstarter. It was the first game I ever backed on Kickstarter, and I backed it for like $160 or something. That was kind of a lot for a video game. I like the Tesla Effect. It definitely hit me right in the nostalgia. You go back to Chandler Avenue where all the games are set, and you walk around and you talk to all of the characters that you've learned to love over the years. They've accounted for the fact that it's been so long since the last one. I did find the story got a little bit convoluted near the end of the game. I should actually probably play this again at some point, because I just played it the one time when it came out. But I think Tesla Effect is pretty good, and I'm going to give it a B. Tex Murphy Overseer is the penultimate Tex Murphy game. It's actually kind of a remake of one of the earlier ones before they got into the real like FMV sort of format that they started doing. And in this one, you're hired by a woman who will later become Tex's wife and then become his ex-wife in order to solve her father's death. It was ruled a suicide, and she wants you to prove that it was not. And again, goes down a rabbit hole, lots of conspiracies and things to discover. They changed the interface from the previous 2 games, which I didn't love, but I thought it was an interesting story. It's got some really good acting in it. There's a lot of puzzles that are specifically about chess, and I like chess, so I liked that a lot. So I'm going to put Tex Murphy Overseer in A. And Under a Killing Moon is the first of the FMV style of Tex Murphy games, though there were 2 other ones before it. And this is the game that actually got me hooked on FMV at all. I remember seeing it in the Radio Shack and seeing that there was actual real actors in this video game, and I thought that was just amazing. And the game is great. Again, you can wander around in a 3D world, and then you talk to people with real FMV, and it's a good story about yet another conspiracy, and you need to save the world. It's funny, but it doesn't take itself too seriously. The puzzles are interesting, although they definitely got better as the series progressed. So I'm giving Under a Killing Moon an A. Alright, we're almost done. Wirehead. I believe this is another digital pictures for the Sega CD. You play a guy with a wire in his head, and the wire connects to a bomb, so your head can explode if you don't do the right thing. And this is a memorization-based, choose-your-own-adventure. You're escaping from some guys who are chasing you at the beginning, and you're wandering down the street, and you say, like, do you hide in the bushes, or do you run down the alley? And if you choose wrong, your game is over, and you have to start again. And I just think that sucks. I don't want to memorize the correct story path in order to get through it. Like, it would be nicer if there was multiple endings that you could get to, but most of those first decisions are just like, you pick the wrong way, you die. Start again. So Wirehead is getting a D. And last but certainly not least is the X-Files game. I was a huge fan of X-Files as a young teenager. I loved the thought of aliens and all sorts of supernatural occurrences. I got this as a gift one Christmas or birthday, I can never remember which. And it is basically like a little or a larger X-Files episode that you get to control. You play a different FBI agent because Mulder and Scully have disappeared and you need to find them. You get to see all the characters you like Skinner and the lone gunman. Mulder and Scully are in the game, and you're questioning people, finding items, investigating scenes, and it's overall pretty good. Some things near the end don't work as well as the rest, but it's a really strong FMV game. I do have a review of this that I made a number of years ago, but yeah, X-Files is getting an A. So that is the final ranking here. Let me just blow this up so you can take a better look at the whole ranking here. Again, a fairly even distribution, lots of Bs, because I do find that most of these games are pretty decent. There are some that might be surprising in the C and D ranks, but you know, it's personal list, and I like some gameplay styles and don't really like others. I definitely recommend The Beast Within and the Pandora Directive, actually the whole Tex Murphy series, if you're at all interested in adventure games and FMV in particular. So yeah, leave me a comment, let me know what you think of this, tell me what your own personal favorite FMV games are, if there's any that you would like to recommend to me to play in the future. There's a few things coming out. There's one called Not for Broadcast, where you control a broadcast network and what's showing on the news. I played the prologue and it seemed like a lot of fun, so looking forward to that. I know Diavecchi Studios announced a new one coming up that I'm also very excited for, but yeah, that is my ranking of all the FMV games I've played. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. If you want to see more rankings, check out my attempt at ranking all of the Sierra and LucasArts adventure games I've played, or look at another one of my videos. I have a Patreon if you want to support the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.